Good evening. I'm Lee McDonald, Director of Counseling, Health, and Wellness for the district. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening in what is no doubt unprecedented times. We have a special guest this evening, Andre Maglione from the New Jersey Student Assistance, Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. In a minute, I'll turn it over to Mr. Maglione to talk a little bit about the financial aid process, walk us through what the FAFSA looks like. With that said, my one piece of advice in this is as you're going down this road and completing the forms and going through the financial aid process, please make sure that you're having a conversation with your son or daughter sooner or later about what is realistic in terms of your family's expectations, in terms of payment, how you're planning to finance college. There are some great resources out there on not only the state website, but the federal website, the FAFSA forecaster, things of that nature that you can run some numbers pretty quickly. I know Andre is going to talk a lot about what those tools are, but please have that conversation sooner than later, just in terms so that you're on the same page as a family. That way, 6 months from now, 3 months from now, your son or daughter is accepted at that dream school, only to find out the finances aren't necessarily there. So that's my one big piece of advice. There's certainly a lot of other things to talk through. We are here as a school counseling staff to support you through this process. A couple housekeeping items. Number one, I am recording this presentation, so we will post this on the district website on our YouTube channel. I'll also make sure it gets sent out through our social media at WWP Counseling. I did post in the chat feature here a link to all the presentation materials, which are on our website under departments, counseling, high school counseling, and college planning guides. So there's a link there. Those resources have already been posted this evening. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Andre and allow him to jump in and share his own screen. We will take questions at the end. If you want to put them into the chat, I'll help navigate that toward the end, and I would just ask that you keep those to general questions. Thank you.
Am I unmuted? Can I be heard? Mr. McDonald, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, good. You can hear me. All right, good. That was a test. Hi, everyone. My name's Andre Maglione with New Jersey Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. I don't see the slides up.
I will go back to my slides here. I can do that. No problem, Andre. I failed to mention, by the way, everyone, Andre had 2 children go through the district. So he knows West Windsor-Plainsboro quite well. I wanted to throw that out there. We think he's a rock star. He's been around our community a long time. He appears at our college fair annually, even though that won't be happening this year, as we discussed on our senior college planning nights last week. But Andre, without further ado, if you want me to just kind of go through some of the slides here, just let me know.
Okay, I should be able to click. Am I able to click, you think?
I probably have to do that on my end, but that's not a problem.
Okay, great. Okay, first of all, I'll get started. This is thank you for having me, Mr. Lee McDonald, obviously West Windsor-Plainsboro, North and South. And of course, all the counselors that may be connected here that I've met over the years. Like Mr. McDonald mentioned, that 2 of my children have gone through the West Windsor-Plainsboro system. And they went to North. They graduated a few years back, and now I can happy to say they're both through college. One's working and one just graduated virtually just in May. So she's now looking for a job, my daughter. So I know my video, I don't think is working. Am I right? I think we just have the screen up, which is great. You guys may have seen me walking around town for the last 20 some years, walking my dog. Yeah, so I guess I've lived in West Windsor for about nearly 27 years. And just recently, my wife and I when the kids moved out to Brooklyn, New York, we just, I guess, downsized or right-sized. So I'm happy to be here with you today, walk you through this, get you as much information I can about financial, because it is a very daunting task. Not only just the application process, but knowing how to organize. New Jersey Higher Education has been around since 1959. We're your state agency for financial aid information. So what that means is we do everything for free. There's no cost, no fee, no nothing. We provide you with everything you need, resources. If you need help talking to someone, working through a situation, divorce, remarried, parents don't live in New Jersey, whatever the situation may be, students going to go in state or out of state. I've been around, I guess, from doing financial aid since 1982, my entire adult life. So I've been as a director of financial aid, a corporate director of financial aid, director of operations at schools, handle facilities. So whatever questions you may have for those 30 some years I've been in the financial aid industry, I'll be glad to assist you in any way possible. At the very end, you'll have my email address direct, and I think a direct phone number, which is also listed. Even in these new times, usually you would see me there at the high school presenting to you in person with all the materials there for you, but we'll do it a little differently this year. So again, New Jersey Higher Ed, state of New Jersey, it's an authority for the state of New Jersey. We've, like I said, 1959, we did all the federal student loans back in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. We have our own state grant, which we'll talk about later today. We put together a publication called Going to College in New Jersey. Generally, I distribute it to every high school so they can distribute to all the students, which I'll still do again this year, the new version, but we'll also have it on iTunes, in iTunes, and the Google store as well, so you can actually download it or link to it directly from our website. We also create the state and federal brochure booklet, which has all the information. It's also on our website, which I'll talk about later. It tells about the federal Pell Grant program, the federal SEOG program, Perkins, the state grant program, every one of the state grant programs. We have a financial aid dictionary for terms. I did provide to the school, the high school today, or the other day, the 8 steps on how to apply for state and federal aid. It's kind of like a guide, those 8 steps that get you through the entire process. And of course, we have a lot of videos, tools, which we'll talk about later. All right. Oh yeah, you have them there. That's great. Look at this, 8 steps on how to apply. It's a single page, which will load to the screen probably in a couple seconds to your screens. You'll see that. And that's how you will actually see how to work yourself through those 8 steps, not 18, 8 steps on how to apply for federal and both state financial aid if your child's thinking about going to a school in New Jersey. So there we go. Boom. 8 steps. I also provided with you tonight the 21, 22. Oh, there it is. Great. Hopefully everyone can see that. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So all 8 are there. And deadlines and all that kind of good stuff, what you'll need. The FAFSA draft FAFSA I also provide. It's a draft. You're the only ones that have it. It was provided to us early because we get to review it because we're a state agency that provides state grants and help the federal government with all the rate processes. So you'll see here, you're the first to see this draft FAFSA for 20. It just came out the other day, as a draft for us to review, but it will probably be the exact final version of a paper PDF FAFSA. Maybe a few words will change, but not much. So you'll see there's so many pages, so many pieces of information that'll help you complete that FAFSA application for federal student aid, and that, of course, state aid. So load all those pages, right? So that's actually the draft. So you can't submit that one. That's the paper one. But I'll tell you now, as I go through this, it's a great tool to help you get organized and get ready to send your child to college. Okay, next slide. All right, so here, we'll get started right away. Goals of the financial aid office, just to set the ground, how it all works, right? The goals of the financial aid office. So each college has a financial aid office. Their goal is to just assist the students in paying for college, right? To basically evaluate the family's ability to pay for all those educational costs. Now, again, some of those educational costs are not needed. This year, if you have any kids going to college, some are working from home. They're doing everything virtually. So there's no housing cost. There's no transportation costs. There's no food plans. So a lot of moms and dads are kind of happy right now to have some of these lower costs. Maybe it's not the best college experience for sure. It's not, but the costs are a lot less, especially if they're, going to some schools that, perhaps cost quite a bit of amount of money. So, and again, their ability at the financial office to distribute limited resources in an equitable manner to that class of students coming in for the next 4 years. Providing a balance of that gift aid, free, you don't have to pay it back, and self-help aid, usually federal direct student loans. And then On top of that, if you see my hand is raised to the ceiling, they have to implement federal and state regulations to ensure their schools are given they're like giving the right dollars to the right students. They're the gatekeepers for both federal and state aid programs. So you're going to see the word verification, provide these documentation. There's a lot of work that they have to do to ensure that the right dollars go to the right student. So that's the goal of that financial aid office. So we'll see how that all works out. So let's go to the next slide. And I start with like a case study. Case study to me is essential, okay? I've been doing this again since 1982, director of financial aid. I worked for the U.S. Department of Education. I used to audit college and universities and ensure that they're in compliance with all federal and state, federal regulations at the time. I used to train the schools, train the bursar's office, the financial aid office. They used to do a lot of work. So you can see I'm very tied in. I used to run the all 8 offices for years, the bursar's office, the student accounts offices. And even then, with all that experience, I needed to be organized. So what I'm providing with you today, and I did update the dates to a little bit so that you get a good idea of what you're looking at. This is my daughter's list of schools. And I asked her when she was graduating, or actually in her junior year, end of her junior year, and visiting colleges, I asked her, I said, Athena, here's what you need to do. All right. We got to get organized. We're going to make sure we do this right. We're going to list every one of our schools, all the schools that you're interested into applying to. And she's going to go through it on an Excel spreadsheet I gave her. I said, just update all these schools. So she put in USC, UCLA, Claremont McKenna, Pomona, NYU, Oberlin. So all these schools, there's actually more than what you see here. Some of the schools she ended up not applying to because it was real early in the process. But these were her schools she wanted to visit, she wanted to see, she wanted to really get a good idea of maybe where her application may go for admissions. So in that thing, in that Excel spreadsheet, I put, Common App. Do they require the Common App? Some schools do and some don't. Some of the California schools do not. So, a Common App is an application for admissions to college. The application they fill out to see if they can get accepted. So that was her job. If there was an essay, she had a little essay thing, she had to do special things. And her status, I wanted to know if the application was submitted. And if that application was submitted, I know I needed to act and I needed to be organized to understand what schools I need to do what to ensure that I get the most financial aid possible. And when I say financial aid, free money to pay for college. So you'll see here, I have 2 columns, like they're like in the, I guess you call that light purple or blue shade. CSS, column E, CSS profile is a type of financial aid application. And I'll give you more information about that later on another slide. But the CSS profile is the college school. I have the exact wording, but scholastic survey, I think, application profile, and it's within the College Board system. Now, only certain schools, usually private schools, require the completion of this CSS profile application for institutional aid. And you'll see here, I went through and I did basically a Google search. And I looked up, I think at the bottom of the slide, you can see, I think I listed what that Google search was, but it was basically going out, Google search, college name, so NYU, prospective student financial aid deadlines. And I just changed that name every time, and I got to the right page for each one of the schools to indicate what the deadlines are. I wrote them in. So these are the schools that have dates that required the CSS profile. So if she got accepted, I want to ensure that we got as much money as possible and for free. The next column would be the FAFSA column, the free application for federal student aid. And you'll see there that every school requires the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA, column F. And basically what I did was I highlighted the 2 of the earliest dates. So if this was last year, January 1st, 2020, Claremont McKenna needed to have the the CSS profile in and the FAFSA in. So they were my 2 earliest of all dates. And some of the schools had the same dates, but I wanted to find the 2 earliest dates because the most important thing is missing a deadline. If you miss a deadline, they assume you're going to pay cash. which is okay. You could do that. But again, it's some of the schools at $64,000 a year times four, you know, could be quite daunting, especially if they would have probably given you $25,000-$30,000 to offset that if you would have completed, so say perhaps the CSS profile or the FAFSA on time with the required documents. And they'll have document deadlines that send in tax returns and those kind of things. CSS profile, FAFSA. So you see those two, you're going to want to get those two dates and get organized. Once you're organized, you won't miss a deadline. That means any money that's potentially coming to you, you're going to get. Now, again, this is not going to take in consideration, for example, I'll give my daughter, she got a 4.3 GPA at West Windsor Plainsboro North. Now, obviously, she was a pretty good, outstanding student. She did well. She took a lot of the advanced classes. She did very, very well. And that's more the merit aid, which we'll talk about a little bit. This was more the applications for financial aid. So let's split those up a little bit. You have merit aid, which is based on the merit of the student, which may not have anything to do with this, but it may, of these applications. Okay, merit may be separate. They say, okay, USC will say, yes, we'd love to accept you based on your merit. We haven't seen your application for financial aid, but we'd like to give you $25,000 a year each year for 4 years if you have at least a 2.0 GPA or 3.0, whatever the requirements are to keep that scholarship based on merit, based on what you accomplished in high school and within the community. All right. And then you have the CSS profile, which could be a blend of both. They could now have another scholarship that, okay, based on grades and based on a little bit of need and the way it works out on the CSS profile, the way you answer some of the questions, well, guess what? There's another $10,000. And maybe there's another bit through the federal FAFSA if they don't accept the CSS profile. So these applications could be separately, right? Merit separate, CSS profile separate, but also they could do a blending. Depends how much money they have and what type of institution it is. Of course, FAFSA would be a little bit different. All right. So I want to give you that, and they have document deadlines. Now, after this, if any of you guys need this spreadsheet, I'll be glad to send it over to you. I have it in Excel, and obviously I have one page of example and then a blank one sheet that you can go ahead and use and use that for. There's no formulas in there. There's nothing like that. I didn't say, okay, the deadline date is this. You have so many days from today's date, how many days you have to do this. No, I didn't do any of that. I just kind of knew my earliest dates. I had to get those in. So that's getting ready. That's getting prepared. And guess what? When you're organized, this isn't as daunting because I only had to do 2 applications for all these schools for federal student aid, state financial aid, and institutional aid. 2 applications. I just listed all the schools on it. All right. I just took away all the problems of applying for financial aid. I had to do the CSS profile, which is a very difficult application. It takes a few days, and it did take me a few days to do, which you could do and save it and come back and save it, go back and in. And eventually got in before the deadline date. Same with the FAFSA. FAFSA wasn't that difficult. I was able to get them done in usually 20 minutes. All right. So if we go to the next slide. So remember, deadlines are important. Don't miss out. I can tell you stories. Student going out of state, friend of a friend, he was a football player playing football. Great. They gave him $5,000 to play football. He wasn't a starter. Dad missed the CSS profile date. I'm friends with the director of financial aid. Dad asked if in his 3rd year, why didn't I get any other aid? Why was it only that $5,000? I said, well, what did you do? Did you do your applications? They require CSS profile. They required the FAFSA. He goes, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I said, well, then you missed the deadline, right? No, I didn't do it. I said, when I called up the director of financial, he was a friend of mine. He said, this family, what do you think they would have got if they would have completed their CSS profile? Oh, probably an extra $20,000 a year in institutional aid. So they would have got 25 total, would have cut his costs down from 24 to 60, and it would have saved $80,000. So it is essential to ensure that you do complete the applications the best you can before the deadline and get them submitted. Next slide. Okay, college savings. When we're talking about paying for college, this is phenomenal, especially if one parent or even 2 parents work and make, say, over $60,000 a year. The college savings plan is truly phenomenal because it's tax-free. You have earnings. Those earnings are tax-free. You can use them. And you know, and of course, if you have a New Jersey one, the ones that we handle, New Jersey Best, that we created, there is also a scholarship if they go to school in the state of New Jersey. So we give away scholarships. So again, that's a great way to pay. Grandparents may have them for the students. You may want to ask to see if they have any college savings plans. It doesn't have to be a New Jersey plan. Any plan works. Matter of fact, when we set my kids up probably 20 some years ago, you know, they were plans from Illinois. They weren't the New Jersey plan. At the time, you know, we were pointed to use the Illinois plan, you know, so that, you know, was something that we used. Now, Mr. McDonald, can I ask you a question? Do you want me to answer the questions as we go along? I could do that. I can read them, or we can wait to the end.
It's up to you. I can.
But yeah, I can pull them up. I can just read through them if you want. We have a few questions so far, so I'll just go through them quickly. If I can clarify, international students need to file a FAFSA. Some of them don't have a social security number, so how would it work? So yes. So what would happen is international students are urged to complete a FAFSA in most cases. Now, if that college, say if it's Georgetown or George Washington or NYU, the CSS profile, which I'll point to you guys later, you'll see that there's a for domestic students and international students, whether or not it's required, okay? And you'll be able to see in this sheet that you'll be able to find online for the CSS profile schools, that you'll see if that's required. If so, they'll use the CSS profile. Some schools will just use the FAFSA, okay, to get that information. For example, in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, we fund through state programs the undocumented students. DACA students are undocumented. So, for example, we urge them not to complete the FAFSA, but Rutgers said, no, we require all students who are seeking any type of institutional aid to complete a FAFSA. And they can complete a FAFSA. They can submit the data over to the school, right? They may use an ITIN number, or they use some other type of number that they may have for this purpose, and the school will get that data and then be able to calculate and award institutional aid. Okay, so I hope that helps on that question. So international students may be required. Now, some schools even have a separate application, their own for international students. So that's something you may want to look at if you have it in, you know, if you have an international family. So next question, do families get some kind of financial aid? Could be, yes. Financially, when you say financial aid to me, that is free money. So my son, I can tell you a story about him, you know, when he went to George Washington, when he was accepted, it was more of his reach school at the time, 9 years ago. Yeah, he did get nothing. He got nothing. I filled out all the applications on time. It was a reach school. I said I would pay no matter what happened, and I got nothing the first year. But because I filled out the financial aid application going forward, they gave me 1 year free. Okay, so we can get in that a little bit later, but yes, most families can get some type of financial aid. I'm going to go down a little bit lower here. Hold on, get caught up, because if not, we'll be doing these all night. Does going to against receiving good financial aid package does going ED? I assume that is, I don't know what the ED stands for. If that's for because it's related to the 529. 529 does not jeopardize financial aid for families that make probably 55,000 or 60,000 or more, okay? Because you're talking about need-based aid. When you say financial aid to me, and you're worried about a 529 plan, you're talking about need-based aid, okay? And need-based aid is for usually families with families income of 50, depends on in a household, we can get into that a little later, but you know, generally that's a good number to say, okay, if it's less than that, yeah, you know, it could hinder some free aid. But I got to be honest with you, if you had that 529 plan for 15 years for the student, you would have earned a lot more than that need-based aid you would have got from the federal government or state of New Jersey in some cases. You know, if you put away a certain amount of money and you earned earnings from that, that was all tax-free, and you get to use that towards college. That may work out to be like financial aid. So, you know, that's what happened with us with our college savings plan. You know, there was money I put in, and there was more money that I made. So that was a good way to say I got some financially, even though we made over $55,000 a year, and we didn't qualify for any need-based aid.
Andre, just to clarify,
Yeah.
the ED meaning early decision.
Oh, oh yeah, that's good. Good job. Okay, great. Does going early decision go against receiving good financial aid package? And you know, I don't think so. I think absolutely not. I mean, when I was on campus, we never early decision did not matter that way. It's just as a student going to secure their spot early, take an early decision. That was their, they're going to do it, and that's them. And I don't think when I was there on campus, and they were talking, probably then at the 4 years in the '90s, absolutely not. And I can't imagine now that they would ever do that going forward. And none of my friends would. When I'm at financial aid conferences, most of them, that has nothing to do with them uh, going to that institution or getting aid with that early decision. It's just something they're going to do. And they already have the money earmarked for those students who are going early decision. So they're taking that pot of money and just splitting it up to make sure they can equally give it out. Okay, so when we get sites for scholarship money, we'll get that at the end, part of that at the very end. I'll go down a little bit more. Oh, I went too far. In the chat box. Will the link to the presentation? Yes, all the link information will be out there for you in 8 steps. Mr. McDonald will show you that, and it's out on the website. A few questions below. My son is a dependent visa, comes under international students. So yeah, international. And listen, anybody with international student has questions after this. I mean, I really can't focus on that all night. But listen, you're going to have my direct phone number. You're going to have my email address. I can help you with that. I can work you through one by one if you want to give me a buzz. But again, this is, if they're not eligible for SSN or an ITIN or anything else, the FAFSA has a way of handling that to put the student's information in and give them a number. Okay, if it's 9999, it says it on the FAFSA form. Okay, so they'll let them use a number, and that'll flag them as those types of students. And that'll be able to submit the FAFSA to the school. It'll be rejected for, citizenship and everything else, but it will calculate an EFC. It will do a few things for them so that the school can help them with institutional aid. Yeah, so again, you're going to have a contact if you guys have any other information. I'll be your financial aid contact if you need. I think for a person doing it since 1982, I'm probably one of the almost oldest financial aid people in the state. I think Kathy Basha Murphy from Montclair State is got about 6 months on me, or maybe a year on me, longer. So if you guys need anything, I'll be glad to assist you with that. Who files the FAFSA, the parent or the student? Great question. Student. Parents just there for income information, and that's it. Okay. So again, immigrant students are able to complete a FAFSA, especially if their parents are on work visa or whatever it may be. They can still do that. And the school will have different ways of doing that. Like I said, they'll be able to, they may have their own institutional application for those international students, where they'll point them to the CSS profile, which you'll know that in advance because you're going to learn a lot tonight about where to find that list. Okay. How do we know which colleges require CSS profile? I'm going to cover that later for you guys. I'll have a link that you can click on when you get your presentation, or type it in your browser, and you'll be able to go out and see that list of schools. All right, I'm going to try to go down a little bit further without making too much of a mess. Can non-US, okay, same question, so yes, you can. Please limit questions to, yeah, okay, that's right too. If we have any questions, you guys can say them at the end. Are there 529 plans in New Jersey? Yes, New Jersey has the 529 NJ Best. You'll find that at our website. And of course, applying for the scholarship, you can find there as well under applying to college, okay? So you'll see that there, and you'll see all the financial aid information for NJ Best. What is the maximum income cutoff for financial aid? Well, guess what? There's different types of financial aid, right? There's merit-based aid, which has nothing to do with, much. Financial aid, if you're talking about need-based aid, yeah, I mean, depends on your household size, number in college, investments, general rule of 55,000 or less, you may not be eligible for need-based aid. Anything over that could be slightly limited, and you wouldn't be eligible for federal or state need-based aid. Okay, but those kind of things we could talk about if particular situations. Who fills out the FAFSA for joint custody? 50-50 situations. You pick. Okay, so you get to pick which parent supports the student more than 50%. Okay, so if you say it's 50-50, then it's your choice. You pick whoever you pick, but you got to stay with that person all 4 years, usually. Okay. Usually the school will require that in the state of New Jersey to leave that as well if you're going to school in New Jersey. I'm seeking an early decision, ED 1 or 2 for my daughter. Would that impact the need-based aid that the college is likely to? Need-based aid, no, right? It will not limit need-based aid. Need-based aid is based on need, based on your income, assets, number of household, number in your household, number of kids going to college, all those kind of good things, investments. And then that's going to determine your need-based aid. And of course, they have federal need-based aid, they have state need-based aid, and then you also have institutional, could be just need-based, could be merit blended with need. So you have different scenarios depending on different schools. I've worked at different institutions, I have friends at different who do different things. And the way they spread their pool around to different students to make sure that everybody can hopefully get some institutional aid. And this is mostly at the private institutions, okay? Not the state institutions, okay? They do have some of that, pooling, the way they're able to pool and blend funds between need and merit, just strictly merit through institution. Okay, so I hope that helped a little bit, but if you have guys more questions later, you're more than welcome to ask. Send me an email or call me. If the deadline for FAFSA is missed for first year, can it be applied for a second year? Yes. So if you missed the FAFSA the first year, which you should not miss, I mean, it means you'd have to do it after the semester's over, the first semester that you would miss out. Yes, you could do it for second year, even if you miss it. I have some students who miss state. They get it the first year, but they don't get state aid the second year because we have a tricky deadline date that a lot of students miss that and could miss out on state-based aid. All right, let's see. Hold on one second. Okay, so the next one is on your spreadsheet. I'm confused with between the 3 gray columns on your spreadsheet. So the difference is, okay, between the 3 columns, the difference between CSS Profile and FAFSA, CSS Profile is a different type of application. It's handled through the College Board, the same ones the students take the SATs, okay? It's the same company, the College Board. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. That's another need-based one. Some schools require both. Some require just the FAFSA. And usually none of them just do CSS Profile. Okay, and we'll get, talk hopefully a little bit more about that in a little bit. Now we have a lot of questions here. Okay. So please, so is there any option for available for parents with yearly income over 100,000? Of course, merit-based aid. That's what your kids have been working for, is merit-based aid, right? They're doing great in school. They're doing a lot of great things, which we'll talk about in another slide. We're going to how things are determined for merit-based aid. From that institutional, but if the family is have income over 100,000, yeah, you're going to look to that merit-based aid, and of course any other scholarships they can get. I hope if I don't miss anybody here. What kind of numbers should we provide on FAFSA first years? What types of financial aid numbers we should provide to fill FAFSAs to students? I don't get that question. I don't understand that question, but we can get to that later. If you guys have that, you can more than email me later on anytime after this presentation. Okay, so let's go into the next slide. We'll skip some of these and we'll go on to the next one. If you can go to the next slide, maybe we'll answer some of your questions. Okay, so sources of types of financial aid. Let's look at this slide. Let's pay attention to this slide very closely because this has something to do with some of your questions. Factors that may influence institutional aid, particularly merit-based aid, academics, athletic ability, SAT scores, ACT scores. I left the ACTs out, but them too, / ACTs. Geographic diversity, AP courses. Like I said, my daughter took a lot of AP courses. She did really well at them. Her GPA was pretty good. So she had that. She did pretty good on her SAT scores. She decided not to play soccer in high school. So she had no athletics because she wasn't going to play it anymore. So that was done. But at least I had the SATs and the AP classes. And she had some talents and some activities that she was doing. So those kind of things for definitely those private institutions really lit it up for them. You know what I mean? So they would hopefully offer some merit-based aid, institutional aid that really help with the cost of college. So we'll go into some more. Legacy, child of alumni, activities, talent, academic track, right? So if it's in a special type of engineering or neurosciences, that school doesn't have many students in that academic track, and they would like to increase that enrollment in that area, they may throw more money institutionally towards students looking at that track. Gender, ethnicity, high school attendant. West Windsor Plainsboro, great high school. Everyone knows about West Windsor Plainsboro, North and South. Students are great there. They go for 4 years, they're done, they go to work. So that looks good for the school. They do real well. And they know every school out there and how they know what the students' academic opportunities are at those high schools and how well they can do and how well they do. Class rank. And for example, I have a niece who comes from a foreign country, Athens, Greece. So basically, when she went to college, she came to the United States to go to college. So she found a school that didn't have many Greek kids there. She's Greek, from Athens, Greece. So, she found Dickinson College. They haven't had a Greek graduate in a while, from Greece. So she applied to that school and a bunch of other schools. It turned out that Dickinson College in Pennsylvania gave her virtually an entire free scholarship because where she was from, that diversity class they're looking for, those international kids they're looking for. So yes, she left from Athens, Greece, came to Dickinson College, and now she's on the grad school at down in Florida. So she's at the clinic down there doing grad school there. So so she did really, really well. She was able to find schools that didn't have a lot of students from that country. So that was a good opportunity for her to find a great opportunity for scholarships or institutional aid. So here's your sources. College, university. I put that on the top because that is the greatest source of aid. All right. There was a school my daughter applied to, which I call a safety school. Actually, it's a financial safety, not just a safety school that she gets in. I know she get in, but I call it financial safety school because I knew, because she was at the top of their enrollment chart, that she would actually, get a lot of institutional aid. So the school cost $66,000. When she got accepted there, they offered her $64,000 a year, and that would mean I would only have to pay $1,000 a semester. She did not choose that school. All right. And I cried for probably about a month and a half because that would have been ideal for me because all that 529 plan money would have been mine to keep, or give back to them somehow. But, so basically, yeah. So you have some of those I call financial safety schools, which is a private school that she really would have done well at, on their academic chart of enrollment. And, obviously they gave her, like I said, 64,000 out of 66,000 to attend there if she would want to go there. Some of the other schools did the same thing, but these were the private institutions. Okay. So she had that academics, she had the SATs, she had AP, she had, high school attendant, all those pluses. And it was a school in California. So, they didn't get a lot of New Jersey kids, I guess, over there at that private school. So that was a helpful thing. It would have been a helpful thing to me. I'm not sure if she would have liked it there, but that would have been her thing. She did not choose that school. So your other big one is federal. The federal government provides grants, scholarships, and student loans. State of New Jersey, grants, scholarships, and student loans, believe it or not, if you want them, if you need them. So you have those three sources: college, university, the main, federal, and state. Federal, though, is need. State of New Jersey is need. College and university doesn't have to be need. A lot of that could be merit. All right. So that's why I put that on the very top. Outside organizations, civic organizations, such as the Rotary Club. I do an event for them every year. They give out money. Students come in, learn about financial aid. They learn about the process of admissions, and they apply for scholarships. All right. The high school has awards. I know Mr. McDonald will probably talk to you later about this, where they'll have scholarship information of local stuff on the website, the Naviance system, I believe you guys still use. And again, parents' employer. My father was a New Jersey State police officer. My son was able to get a $500 scholarship from the New Jersey State Police. So, those kind of things you should look at. And I know when I worked for Chubb Corporation, they had that as well. They had institutional scholarship for the, the parents' kids going to college. So you want to make sure you explore those opportunities. Okay, so there's your sources. And then your types. Grants are free, you don't pay back. Scholarships are free, you do not pay back. Employment opportunities, right? They can work on campus, work off campus, get paid $13, $14 an hour. It's a great program if your child can get into that employment. And, it maybe not the first year because they're fulfilling their way through it, but maybe the second or third year because they can make some good money and get some great experience. Okay. And then, of course, the last one at the very bottom there, self-help loans. Okay. So the federal government has that. If you go over that amount, of course, the state of New Jersey has some help there. Private banks have that as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, go ahead. Next one. Thanks. All right. So I don't know who we have out there. Usually I ask for a raise of hands, but we may have some sophomore parents, freshman parents, junior parents, maybe some senior parents too, I'm not sure. But the net price calculator, every college in the United States, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, everyone, doesn't matter who, has to have a net price calculator. And they do. All institutions have it. If they don't, they're out of financial aid programs. Students will be able to estimate the individual net price per institution. So I showed an example. Rutgers has it, obviously. The calculator takes about 8 minutes to complete. They complete a bunch of information. The system goes out once you hit submit, and it goes out and finds families just like yours, maybe 4 in a household, 1 in college. You make about $100,000. They find families with the same type of situation. Some schools may ask about GPA, SAT scores, to really narrow it down to give you a good idea of what the net price will cost that family, cost that student to go to school. And they'll base it on full-time, first-time degree-seeking students, okay? So that's what they'll look at to go out to give you a good idea of what it's going to cost. My daughter, for example, I heard of Oberlin, but I didn't really know much about it. It's in Ohio, kind of artsy school or something like that, pretty well-ranked school. And I didn't really, I said, okay, I didn't really know much about it. So I went out to their net price calculator just to get an idea. I saw their costs, I saw everything else. And, it was in the $60,000 range or whatever with housing and food plans and all that kind of good stuff. So I went out and used this net price calculator. Get a good idea of what you think it's going to cost you. And again, they weren't that off either because they did accept her and they gave her a nice chunk of money as institutional aid in the $20,000 or $30,000. Most made it half the cost of the school. And institutional aid, and their net price calculator was actually pretty close to that because they had some really good information they captured from the questions I answered to give us a good answer of what other students like us in the same family pay. Okay, so that's a great tool. If you don't know, this is a great place to go. Net price calculator. Everybody has it on their website. You'll find it in the admissions part of the website of the college, the financial aid part of the college, or both. Okay, so you'll see it there. Okay. If I go to the next slide, I think we got that net price calculator done. College scorecard. Great. I think you mentioned it earlier. College scorecard. I didn't know anything too much about. I didn't know how big Oberlin was. I didn't know much about it. And I don't like reading what somebody else wrote because I don't know who wrote it. So I go to the website where the federal government has that helps you understand what type of school it is. If your child doesn't know what type of school or where they like to go or what schools are big schools or little schools or medium schools, you could actually, or locations, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, you can actually use this website, this collegescorecard.ed.gov, to see graduation rates, how much a graduate earns, how much debt they have when they graduate, ability to find a middle-class job, ability to pay off debt. The colleges, as long as I've been doing this since the 80s, we've always completed IPEDS reports, and that was data on our students, and we submitted this into them every year. And over the last 20 or 30 years, they've been putting this out so that families can get a good idea to learn more about the institution. Okay, so this is advanced searches you can do just New Jersey. And I think the next slide, if you want to, I think I just did it on New Jersey. So yes, I just queried up some New Jersey, NJIT, College of New Jersey, Thomas Edison came up, Ramapo, Rutgers. They have one in New Brunswick, Newark, and Camden. Rowan University tells you, the undergraduates, how many they have, average annual cost, graduation rate, salary after attending. So this is how they lay this out for you. So you can get a good idea and understanding about the school that your child's looking to go to. Next slide, I think. Here's the next page. If you dial down a little deeper, it shows how many of them get federal student loans, how many kids have debt after they graduate, what the typical debt is, graduate. So you'll see all that. You break down cost, financial aid and debt. So you get a lot of information about that institution. It just makes you a little bit more knowledgeable. And you know, when the student says, yes, I want to go to that school, you say, okay, good. I understand. They get an 80% graduation rate. That was one of the higher ones, you know, saying, you know, and the annual costs were a little bit lower than everybody else. The salary after starting was pretty good. So that's, you know, you feel a little bit better about the selection and choice that the student has made. So it's a great little tool to identify schools as well as get some in-depth information about it. And they put it in a nice way, nice format for you to really see it. All right, next slide. All right, so how do you make college more affordable, right? So we talked about, you know, my chart, how I got organized. The CSS profile, right? It's the College Scholarship Services CSS profile begins October 1st. So if I have any senior parents, right, that's going to get started October 1st. And you have to pay because it's the College Board, the ones that do your SATs, that you pay them to do SATs, they also charge you for the CSS profile. $25 for the first school, $16 for each additional school that you add to your list. So I give you the profile. Now here's a link, which you guys will have access to right here. You don't have to write it down. You have to get a screenshot. But this is where you'll get the list of participating institutions, okay? And they'll list the current year, upcoming year probably, for the 21-22 year, might be out there now. And it'll show you the schools in alphabetical order that require the CSS profile. It'll show you for yes for domestic students, yes for international students, or no for international students. So they may have a special one for international students for CSS. This is the place where you're going to locate that information. These are the schools. Yes. Now, only thing you need to know is the deadline date. And of course, it'd be nice if they put the deadline date for each college there, since they list their name, but they don't. So if you see this, if your child says, yes, I'm interested in Georgetown University and NYU, well, guess what? Or, you know, Harvard, you know, they will be on that list, and you will see whether or not they're, you know, obviously if they're on the list, they're going to require it for usually domestic students, but also international students, whether they do it for them or do they just use the regular CSS profile. Here's the actual link to the website for cssprofile.collegeboard.org where you'll start the application. So I've given you all the information for that only if your school requires it. You don't submit Rutgers if Rutgers is not on the list. There's no, they won't be there on the list to submit the CSS profile. So you don't have to worry about that. There was my nephew who I helped. Obviously, I have 13 nephews, nieces and nephews. So I do all their financial aid. So, you know, basically when I had his list, he had schools, none of them required the CSS profile. That was great. You know, that was great for me because I didn't have to help out with that with his mother and either my sister or my brother with that. So, you know, in this case or that instance for him, my one nephew, that was not, he didn't have to worry about CSS profile. I looked at the list, none of the schools were on that list. So I only had to worry about what? The other column, FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Okay, so that's how that'll work. Look at your participating institutions. The list won't change much. So if they have last year's list still there, I'm sure it'll be next year's list the same way. And you can actually get a good idea of what schools are on that list tonight. Okay, there's the CSS profile. They even have like a video to show you how to do the CSS profile. Like I said, it took me like 3 days to go through the whole thing. I was able to go to a certain point. I said, oh, this is getting too much. You know, this was getting to be too much. So I saved my stuff and I came back the next day or a couple hours later. Okay, until I got it all done. I just had to make sure I gave myself enough time to have it submitted for all the schools in one shot. Number 2, there's the free application for federal student aid. It begins this October 1st in a couple weeks. And that's for the 2021 year. For 21-22 year starts the same thing. So technically any senior can start getting their FAFSAs completed. Okay, so that's where the free application for federal student aid begins. I did provide you with, the school has out on their website, the 21-22 draft FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. It's a draft. They don't have the new one out yet. It's not available. It's not available till October the 1st. You guys are the first to see it. They just sent it out to all the schools to review it, to the vendors who have to build software, all that kind of stuff to just get an idea of what the new FAFSA is going to look like. You know, they change the color from year to year. So And the questions usually remain about the same. Sometimes they change the instruction wording slightly, but you'll have it there. And what I do is, not that I'm old school, but I prefer not to go straight to the computer and do FAFSA on the web. I mean, there are people that just can go straight out there and say, okay, I'm just going to go on the computer and start doing it with FAFSA at FAFSA.gov. I actually get the paper PDF, which I provided, and I fill that out on paper first. And then when I'm ready, I can go to the computer and go through and answer all the questions, because I have all the answers down on paper already for the exact FAFSA. So this can help you get organized, get the FAFSA completed. And if you have any questions when you go through it, so say tomorrow or the next day, you print it out, you have it, you throw it on your computer, you download it. And if you have questions about a certain question, like how do I answer it? Well, guess what? Send me an email or give me a buzz, give me a call. Okay. And I can help you out with that. And deadlines do matter. If you get nothing out of this tonight, the deadlines are the most important thing. That's where most money is lost because, well, not only deadlines, but I get a lot of cases where my neighbor told me I shouldn't fill it out. And I give my best advice to you, even if your neighbor is a CPA or an accountant, they'll probably be honest with you. They knew nothing about financial aid. FAFSA is different. I just actually talked to an accountant today, a CPA for about 20 years. He goes, he didn't really know how to answer some of the questions. Okay. So, but if you have problems, obviously we're here to help you, and deadlines do matter. And it is important to complete the application. Like I stated earlier, if you missed it, my son was 8 years ago, went to West Windsor Plainsboro North. He did early decision at George Washington. I thought it was a little reach. Actually, I was doing a financial aid presentation at Bridgewater Raritan, obviously in person. It was 9 years ago. And that night was the night early decision kids were going to find out if they were going to get accepted. And quite frankly, I told the group, I said, listen, I'm going to find out tonight if he's going to get in his early decision school. And I'm actually being honest with you. I'm not a bad parent. I'm hoping he doesn't get accepted because it's more of a reach school for him. Okay. Based on his grades and academics, I kind of knew, since I worked at schools forever, that was going to be a reach. And most likely, because our income was over, say, $100,000, I wasn't getting any need-based aid. I was hoping for institutional. And because it was a reach, I had a feeling I might not get anything. And at the time, George Washington, where he applied to early decision, was the most expensive school in the nation at $66,000 a year. So I told the parent, listen, I'm not a bad parent. I just hope he doesn't get accepted. About an hour and a half later, I got the text message from him saying he got accepted to George Washington. And I said, Parrish, hold on for a second. I said, did they say that he got any institutional aid? I said, did you get any institutional aid? He goes, no, it doesn't say that here. I didn't get anything, but they accepted me. So, obviously, that was a little bummer for me, knowing that I'd have to pay the $66,000 for the first year. I continued the financial aid application. Each year I completed the FAFSA knowing I made well over $100,000. I knew I wouldn't be qualified for need-based aid, but I knew kids dropped out. I knew kids left money on the table. They didn't stay. So because I was relentless with the FAFSA, and I filled it out every year, the second year they gave him $13,900, say $14,000. The third year they gave him $19,900. And the fourth year, they gave him, didn't live on campus, they gave him $30,000. So that's just because I completed the FAFSA. I had absolutely no need. His grades weren't the best after the first year, but I was relentless in making sure I always completed the FAFSA. And again, it wasn't a state school, it was a private institution. So I knew that they would always hopefully have some money someday to share with my son, who was doing okay, progressing very well. His grades, he was pretty good socially in the beginning. His grades weren't the best, and they got better and better. And the awards got better and better. So the institutional aid came into play. They gave me virtually 1 year for free. So I say stick with it. The parents would say, well, don't do it. Well, again, make sure if their kids are going to a state school, that might be the case. But if it's the private institution, you stay with it. You keep on hounding until, hopefully one of those years you'll get more and more financial aid. So if you start with 10, maybe you can grow that to 25, 30,000 a year. Okay. So you want to stay with it, keep applying, even though your income, you don't get need-based federal or state aid, it doesn't matter. You want to stay with it, make sure you keep on applying. And of course, those deadlines do matter. Next slide. All right. So here it is, 21-22 FAFSA. This is all you need. This is how it works. There's no changing things. When I put this together, I just got the new FAFSA for 21-22. So I didn't get the chance to update the presentation that I sent out a few days ago, but you guys have the newest one out there. But this is what you're going to need: an FSA ID, which is a user ID and password for one of the parents and the student. So each of you will have a user ID and password. Basically, for the parent, all it is used for is to go out to the IRS system and bring in your IRS data and bring it over to the FAFSA. So they'll need that FSA ID for you to do that. It'll link you out. You'll bring back your information. Parents, you'll also have to e-sign it. You'll use that same user ID and password, FSA ID, to do that. Only one parent needs it. Doesn't matter which parent. It'll be the one parent. And then the student will need their own. They're going to sign in with it in the beginning. They'll start putting in all their information, and they'll, fill that out. All you're going to need is the 2019 actual federal tax return. All the answers come from that form, as well as the one where it has to split out if you're married parents and you both work, you have to figure out which parent makes what. The W-2s help out with that. That's all you really need to complete a FAFSA. I probably filled out 10,000, 15,000 range since 1982 for families. I could probably get them done in 12 minutes. It's not that hard. You obviously just have to take the paper, one that I provided to you guys tonight, get your 2019 taxes, which you already have done, and you can actually complete the FAFSA in advance and be ready. Now, there's also FAFSA calculators out there that can actually calculate your need, your expected family contribution that this calculates, that helps the schools determine their need-based eligibility. So again, you have your tools right now. You have your 2019 taxes. That's what they use. That's the only thing they use initially to do the FAFSA. So if your income's lower in the more current year, say 2020, the school has a process for that. Okay, so the school will have a process. You will submit your FAFSA the correct way first with your 2019 information. And when it comes back and your child makes a decision and your income you've determined in year 2020 is less than 19, you can go to the school and they have a special process, professional judgment. They'll collect documents on 20. They can make a change to that. So again, just repeat, FSA ID is a username and password. And I have a sheet, which I'll show you later. I think we have some links. We have how to create an FSA ID for that one parent and student, okay? We have a single page form that kind of walks you through it. So you'll have that. And then your 2019 taxes. So right now, you can probably figure out what your financial aid will be for need-based aid. All right, next slide. I might lose Mr. McDonald. So here we go. So yeah, here's those links. See that? Wow, look at that. FAFSA assistance. So we have a page at our website, hesaa.org, pages/FAFSA.aspx. It's njfafsadays.org. Basically, what we do is we have a page. And it lists events out there to help you with FAFSAs, FAFSA completion. This year is going to be a little different because of the COVID. We don't have the in-person thing at, say, Mercer County College or at Rider University or at Seton Hall University. We won't have those in-person things, but we have this, how to create an FSA ID. We have a view, the download PDF. We even have a YouTube video on how to complete the FSA ID. Steps on how to apply for federal and state aid. We have a video and we have a download of a form how to do it. We have FAFSA completion instructions. Now, in the old days, I'll go back to 1819, the federal government used to give out a 90-page super detailed instructions on how to complete the FAFSA. Not just the FAFSA form with some instructions, but a super detailed one. Special, super duper, that is there, FAFSA completion instructions. So if you needed to really dig down on one of the questions, you can download this. And it is, yes, it is old, a couple years old, but like I said, it doesn't change that much. The rules don't change that much. So it's a great tool if you need it. If you have any questions for that, let me know and I'll help you. Avoid common FAFSA mistakes. Financially managed, this is our NJFAM system for state aid. So if your child's thinking about going to a New Jersey state school, it's a good idea to figure out if they're going to be state grant eligible. We have this system. And of course, we have the financial aid information, session flyers, advertised dates, that kind of stuff. So you have this great page for all this great information if you guys need it. Next slide. And again, if you came to us late, this presentation will be available to you online at the school. The school will have that for you. And Mr. McDonald will talk to you later, maybe at the end, to tell you exactly where to get everything. All right, so undocumented students are here, undocumented or DACA students. Undocumented or DACA. The state of New Jersey has a application for them to apply for state aid, not FAFSA, but for New Jersey Dreamers. Okay, it's what we call an alternative application. It's just like the FAFSA. So if we have any students who are undocumented or DACA, they can use this application. Next, and then the school would get it and do the same thing. It's the same process. It all gets merged into our same database with our FAFSA data for our state grant eligibility. All right, so that's a link right from our main website at hesaa.org. And then, of course, apply now. Next slide. All right, so what are they doing? So this FAFSA form, this free application for federal student aid, is calculating your expected family contribution. All right, this is exactly what they believe, the federal government, Congress, believes you should pay for your child's education. So once you answer all those questions on the FAFSA, it will then calculate and you submit it. It'll, within seconds, tell your expected family contribution. It's the basis of a financial aid need package. Maybe I should put the word need in there, but it is it's more of a need-based package. The institutional aid could be a blend of this, but in most cases, merit aid, and then this other money they have, say the alumni associations and other associations on campus, could be based on need and part of that, their own methodology. Okay, so it is kind of the base of the financial aid package that you'll get from the school. It's a federal formula. It changes slightly every year. EFC and financial need are guidelines used by the school. There's some schools that will package 100% in need. There's some schools that will not package 100% in need, and they can't because they don't have the institutional aid to do so. So you can find schools that can do maybe, they're need sensitive, where they're going to try to get as much as they can for you. So there's schools they go out to look for that are need sensitive or can do 100% of need. If you have a high need, now some of the ranges of EFCs, 0, you'll get the most need. 99999 is more and more income and more assets and more everything, and basically it's your EFC range that will help them determine what they'll give. Now remember, when I said that my son completed the FAFSA, he got nothing the first year, no need. Our income got stronger the next year for the FAFSA, which I filled it out. It actually went up whatever year that was, and it went up the year after that. So we became less and less need eligible, but the school still had institutional money they could give us. I completed the FAFSA, I got an EFC. School didn't care if the EFC went higher. They didn't care if we made more money. They still were able to award us some institutional aid. Okay, so that's one of the things that we kept at it, and the school was able to do, to be able to provide some more money. Okay, so the EFC is not really technically a measurement of your ability to pay, but it does, or financial aid strength. It's just your financial strength. All right, the EFC is a measurement of your financial strength, and it does not take in consideration credit card debt, your primary residency debt. It doesn't take into any consideration any of that stuff. How much property tax? I always hear, parents always call me saying, well, do you know how much I pay in property tax? How come I can't get any need-based aid? Kind of thing. So always get that kind of, call. But again, it doesn't look at any of that kind of stuff. It really looks at your income, your assets, number in college, number in your household, and is really then calculating that age of the older parent and all that kind of good stuff. Now, when you complete the FAFSA, you'll have some parents that are separated or divorced. Okay, you guys have to decide which parent is the one who provides them more than 50% of the support. It may not be the parent that they're living with, but the one that provides more than 50% of the support would be the parent you would use. All right, so then we would be able to do that. So, so that's what that would be. And remember, when you do the 21-22 FAFSA, the seniors that are in school now, 21-22, that's the year it'll be, the FAFSA I'm providing, you'll read on it. You only provide the 2019 income. Only. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. It's the 2019 income. If you do it wrong, you put in 20 what you think it's going to be, well, then it would be wrong. And they're going to make you correct it to 19. And then, listen, if you have special circumstances, the school has a special process to use more recent income because of the COVID thing and that kind of thing. So, but you have to do it right the first time. You can't kind of skip through the process here, use my 2020, even though it's asking for 2019. Okay. All right. That's it. Next slide. Hope that helps a little bit on your EFC, what you're calculating. And now you got the cost of attendance. So we have your expected family contribution that they're figuring out, and now your cost of attendance. All the financial aid has to do is take this cost of attendance, which is tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, equipment, transportation, miscellaneous personal expense. It's a giant number. Study abroad cost, if they're doing study abroad, my daughter actually did that for the first year. Dependent care expenses, expenses related to a disability. These are all components of a cost of attendance. It can be, right? Most time you'll see tuition and fees, room and board, the first 3 or 4 of them. They'll take that cost of attendance and then they'll subtract it from your expected family contribution. And that simple mathematical subtraction is your need. Cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution that comes from your FAFSA will be your need. Now, if the school, because you went through the special circumstances and the school determined that they should use your 2020 income, well, guess what? They'll make that change and make that change on the FAFSA for you. That'll maybe change your EFC. It will. Obviously, if it doesn't change your EFC, they're not going to change it, make the change because it'll be senseless. But again, the FAFSA will use your 19. Remember, if there's special circumstances, which we'll probably have a lot of because of the COVID, where income's reduced, you'll submit as 19, and then you'll see the school about your 2020, perhaps them using that to recalculate everything. But it's simple. They'll determine that EFC, the cost of attendance for that school, and boom, the mathematics, that's your need. Okay? And again, like I said, some schools package 100% of need. Some do not. Okay? Rutgers may be a good example of that, where, the family has need of $5,000 or $6,000, $8,000, say $8,000. They'll get a federal student loan and maybe a couple $1,000s in a merit scholarship to cover most of that. Okay? But maybe that would be handled differently at Wesleyan College. Maybe that'll be handled differently at Westchester University, Delaware University, Rowan, Ramapo. Each one will do something different. Okay, so how that'll work. Okay, so now. Next slide. So you'll see I give you a sample of a shopping sheet that you all should get if you apply to any New Jersey schools. But I think this is the whole, putting it all together. Okay, so private schools, you'll see the cost of attendance is variable. It's different between colleges, not only privates, but also the public 4-year schools, as well as the 2-year community colleges. It's variable. It will change. The privates are usually higher. Then state schools, then you see the boxes there, how they go down. The school is then going to take their cost of attendance, subtract that expected family contribution. That is consistent no matter what school you choose. If it's NYU, if it's Pace University, if it's Harvard, Yale, that is constant. That EFC will not change. That will be your expected family contribution as determined by the school. And generally, if a school does a projected year income change, right? So remember, because you submitted your FAFSA at 19, but one of the schools were able to do a projected year income change and use 2020, and they recalculated everything. Well, guess what? Every school will get that you applied to with the FAFSA. Everyone is on your list. And they will most likely use that lower EFC if it lowered the EFC. And that would be constant amongst all the schools. So you'll see here, your needs going to be variable. Each school will be different. And again, each school will be different on the institutional aid. Private schools may have a lot more institutional aid. State schools might have less institutional aid. And then the 2-year schools may even have a little bit less. Okay? And again, that's for 1 year. Cost of attendance is for 1 year. And then each year, you'll do the FAFSA and this whole calculation gets done again. So 23, 24, they'll use the 2020 income. So, that's how that'll work. So each year will be different. Each year you complete a FAFSA. You'll start, if you have any seniors now, 21, 22. Next slide. All right, so financial aid results. This is a shopping sheet. Every school in New Jersey has to use this. Made a law that they have to use this shopping type sheet. Basically, it's so families can see their total cost of attendance for that year. Each year could change because they could have a tuition increase. They could have a tuition decrease. Remember, students who went to school last year and lived on campus and they're now living at home, their cost of attendance is going to change because they don't have housing. They don't have anything else. So you'll see that kind of change from year to year on your costs. So cost of attendance is one box. That's your cost. That's what it's going to cost you. Then it's all your merit and need-based aid in the second box. Then that's what we care about at the state of New Jersey. What is that net cost for free? Okay. Then you're going to see your net cost. And that means after you subtract the free money from the total cost, this is your net. This is what it's going to cost you. Now, these are different ways of paying for it. You know, there's federal work study, there's federal direct student loans, there's private loans, there's, you know, there's other scholarships you can get from, you know, different family employers. So you'll have all those different things. And this is the way New Jersey breaks this out. And we have one of these on our website. So, you know, I've had a couple parents say, listen, my kid's thinking about going to school, a couple schools in New Jersey and a couple schools out of state. Do you have a blank one of these? So I can then compare them exactly to apples. So I can take this, you know, use this exact same form that I got for the New Jersey schools to use it for these out-of-state schools so that you can compare apples to apples to see exactly what it's going to cost. So, you know, we have that on our website as well for the schools to use, but you guys are more than welcome to download it and use it yourself. So it's transparency, separate cost of attendance, awards and grants, final cost, federal student loans, any alternative loans. All right, so next slide. And we're getting towards the end of this. Then we can answer some questions. Types of available aid from the federal government. This is what you're going for. This is need-based aid, okay? So this is stuff I can tell you about. Institutional aid I can't tell you about besides saying grades, SAT scores, college they choose, you know, their talents, their athletes, Division I. That I can't tell you what that number is going to be. It's going to be varying for each school. But for federal need-based aid, here's the type. It's a federal Pell Grant. The students can get up to a $6,395 free grant if their EFC is around 0. And as that EFC gets higher and higher, that amount gets lower and lower until eventually it gets to 0. So if your EFC is 5,600, that might be the end of the federal Pell Grant. So if you have a 6,800 EFC, well, that might mean if you look at the chart, there's charts out there, they'll see that 6,800 EFC will give you 0 Pell Grant. As you work your way down, you'll see how that'll work. You know, obviously, if the EFC is lower and lower, you might start seeing a $500 award, and that award will grow. SEOG is a supplemental education opportunity grant. The government gives the schools the money to give out to the most needy first, if they need it, and then they work their way up to the, you know, the higher EFCs. But it's limited. The government doesn't give them a lot of money in this campus-based program called SEOG, but it is a free grant. You could get up to a $4,000 award. So that's a great program. Again, you know, it's for the lower EFCs, but yet not fully Pell Grant eligible. They'll try to fix, you know, try to import them in there. There's a Teach Grant. So if your child wants to go to a school that offers Teach Grants, would be teachers, well, there's a Teach Grant. So it doesn't matter how much money you make, the student can get $3,736 for free. But you do sign a contract with the U.S. Department of Education saying that if you got to teach in a high need area as designated by the U.S. Department of Education or by your state. And if you do that for so many years, this Teach Grant stays a Teach Grant. If you don't do it and say you leave and go to work at West Windsor Plainsboro, which is not a high need area, before this is up, this grant will turn into a retroactive loan with all the interest built in. Okay, so the students are actually doing a contract with the government that they're going to teach in a high need area. And if so, they want to do this, then they're also going to sign a promissory note in case they don't for that amount of money if they decide not to fulfill their obligation in that agreement. Okay, so it's a Teach Grant. So remember, Pell Grant is for U.S. citizens, eligible non-citizens. Same thing with SEOG and Teach Grant. U.S. citizen, eligible non-citizens. Okay, so if that helps answer some of the questions out there, because I know West Windsor has a bunch of international students, technically, or here on work visas. So again, the federal programs are for U.S. citizen eligible non-citizens with an eligible green card, immigration card. All right, and then more information, obviously, studentaid.gov. There's stuff for military people as well, but I didn't list all that kind of stuff, but they have some other programs, but studentaid.gov is there. And that's where you also apply for the FAFSA as well. All right, next slide. Now, I talked to a lot of parents today on the phone, so I may lose my voice eventually, but I'm still going strong. So here we go. So types of financial aid available from the state of New Jersey. So remember, last slide was federal. This slide is state of New Jersey. We have a whole bunch of programs. The TAG program, we're the largest grant provider of any state in the nation. Okay, we provide the most per student. It's for 2-year schools, 4-year schools, public and private. Okay, so the TAG grant, so once you complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, or the alternative application for a DACA student or undocumented student, then yes, you could apply and get this TAG grant money, but it's for full-time tuition only. Part-time is for community college only, the second one in the list, $610 to $2,088, depending on your eligibility index. That's how much money you can get for part-time, but it's only at a community college. It doesn't work at a 4-year institution. I think once you're going to a 4-year institution, they want you to do it full-time and get done. EOF, Education Opportunity Fund, it's a great program. If you're a first-generation college goer and your income's below a certain threshold, I think 28,000, I forget the exact number. There's a chart online at the New Jersey Secretary's office who handle the EOF program, but you can get up to $2,500. It's not the money, it's really the success support. You get college success support. Students get in early for college, they get acclimated, they get assistance, they have a whole group of people who help them achieve through EOF. NJ Stars. So I think I saw a question come up about NJ Stars. So if your child's in the top 15% in their junior year, that's over now, for those who are seniors, or if they they get into the top 15% by the end of their senior year when they graduate, well, then they would qualify for, no matter what the family income is, for the first 2 years at a community college for free tuition. Once they graduate with a certain GPA from the community college, they can move on to NJ Stars 2, which is any of our 4-year schools, public or private, Seton Hall, Monmouth, Rutgers, Rowan, Ramapo, Richard Stockton. They would be able to move on. All their credits would transfer over. They would have a certain GPA. And as long as the family's income is under $225,000, they would qualify. This has a little knee component to it for $2,500 per year for NJ Stars 2 for the 4-year schools. Okay. There's the Governor's Urban Scholarship. If you live in Trenton, Camden, and a few other cities across the state, you can get up to an extra $1,000 if you're in the top 5% of your high school graduating class. There's NJ Gives for women and minorities if you want to go into the building trades, solar panel installation, electrician. If they don't want to go the traditional way, if you're a woman or a minority, you can get up to $2,000 a year for 2 years for the NJ Gives program. You can slide down a little bit lower, and we have the Community College Opportunity Grant, which is new. If the family income is below $65,000 AGI, from 0 to $65,000, that means AGI 0. That means you have to file taxes. So to qualify for a Community College Opportunity Grant from the state of New Jersey and get free tuition and fees at our community college for the first 2 years, you have to have an AGI between 0 and 65,000. So if you have a negative AGI, notice that doesn't qualify, but it has to be 0 to 65,000, file federal taxes. You would qualify for free community college. It's tuition and most fees. If you go to a nursing program, it doesn't cover all the fees. There's a couple of majors that doesn't cover all the fees. And again, it's through the budget. All these programs go through budget every year to see if they're going to be cut or increased. But everyone here are fully funded for the year for the state of New Jersey. Next slide. Now, NJ fams, obviously, if your child's looking to go to a school in New Jersey and you completed your FAFSA already, and it's October 1st, and you're the first one to complete the FAFSA, you could go ahead and after about a week, when we get the FAFSA data at the state of New Jersey, the student can create a username and password. And if they have 5 New Jersey schools on their list, they can see if they were eligible for New Jersey state grants. Okay, so that's a good way to check to see what am I passing up if I leave the state. All right, or if I choose a community college over a Rowan 4-year school. So it's a good way to kind of get a good idea to see, what your potential eligibility is for New Jersey state grant aid. So yeah, they would have to, a student would create an account here after they complete the FAFSA, and then they would be able to see exactly, what their eligibility would be for. Okay, so that's it there. Let me show you a couple more slides. Let's see. Yeah, so yeah, if you go in there, you'll see, if a student is, logs in to see what their awards are, they'll have a to-do list if there's anything outstanding to do. You can view and update your school. So if you want to see if, say, for example, you didn't put a school on your FAFSA that's a New Jersey school, say like Stevens Institute of Technology, and you want to go ahead and put that on just to see if you would qualify, you can do that, hit submit, and you'd see if you would be eligible based on the information we had. There, you can apply for an NJ Best Scholarship. So in here, if your family if a student lost a family member in the World Trade Center, there's a World Trade Center scholarship. There's a bunch of stuff in the apply for online scholarships that we have. Police officer, firefighters, if parent was killed in those type of careers, there are special awards for them. They can apply for a scholarship online. Now, awards and eligibility is where you'll actually see what you're eligible to receive for any state grants for any state schools. You'll see your notifications. Next slide. This is your to-do list. We can skip through this. If you had things on your to-do list, you would see them here if we owed us stuff, like if you didn't complete your FAFSA and those kind of things. So we can stop right here. So listen, so we talked about free money. We got, institutional aid, very, very important, right? To me, getting the institutional aid is the most important thing. If that is not enough, any need-based aid, blended need-based aid, CSS profile money, any free money that you don't have to pay back, this is what happens. So if it's not enough and you still have a balance, this is what could happen. If you go to the next slide, we'll go through that. Mr. McDonald, if you're out there, if you can slide me, oh, great. Okay, so here we go. So again, free money, most important, meeting all your deadlines. But if it's short and you don't have enough, and let's hope that you only have a small amount, self-help loans and gap shortfall solutions. The federal government has a loan program for students that has to be used first. This year, 2.75 fixed rate % for their loans. They do charge a little bit of a fee, so freshmen can get $5,500 the first year, $6,500 the second year, $7,500 the third year, $7,500 the fourth year. Congress does not want students to borrow more than that. They want them to find a school that between the free money and anything owed does not exceed this amount. It's manageable at that point, right? College would be manageable for those students. But if it isn't still enough, if that $5,500 for freshman year that in a student loan that the student would have to pay back, where hopefully part of it's subsidized, where the government will pay the interest while the student's in school. And the unsubsidized part, well, the interest will accrue at 2.75% for 2,000 of that equals the 5,500. That's there for them. And that's a loan they get in their own name. That is their loan. You do not have to co-sign for this. And again, it's a federal program. Because it's a federal program, it's for U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens, meeting the requirements on the FAFSA to be an eligible non-citizen. They would be able to borrow that amount to students in their own name. You don't have to co-sign because if they forgive all the kids' student loans, that the government borrows money and then we pay that back. That's our debt. So we're really the co-signers for all the student loans. So this is basically how that works. So the next year, in their sophomore year, they get an additional $1,000. They'll go up to $6,500. $4,500 would be subsidized, hopefully, and the other $2,000 would be unsub. So unsubs always stays at $2,000. The subsidized part does grow if you do meet those. The students do not have to pay this money back until 6 months after they leave school. There's all kinds of different payment plans for that. There's 6 different, regular standard repayment, there's graduated repayment, there's income sensitive, there's just a whole bunch of different pay as you earn. There's a whole bunch of different plans they have that the federal government works out for students to make this manageable. The most a student can borrow through this is capped at $31,000. That's it. The students would get this at the federal website. So the school is going to actually put this on the student's award notice. If they don't have enough free money to cover all the costs, they're going to put this out there and say, listen, on their award notice, do you want to accept a federal direct student loan, subsidized $3,500, unsubsidized $2,000? If so, accept it. And if they accept it, they'll give them the instructions on how they apply for it. They'll do an entrance counseling online. They'll do a master promissory note. The school will give them all the instructions. If the school doesn't give you the instructions, you ask me, and I'll be able to kind of point you in the right direction to get you started with it. Okay? So that's if they have a balance. Now, if they don't have a balance, then they don't need it. So that's good. We don't have to worry about this. But in most cases where parents work and it's not a financial safety school, they may need to borrow this amount of money for the students to pay back, 6 months after they leave school. The administration did a great job. The interest rate last year was like 5% for the students. This year's like cut in half, 2.75. So they did a great job in acquiring low interest rates for the students. Since the rates were lower, they were able to really acquire it and timed it just right for them when they went and did their sale of whatever 10-year treasuries. So that's the thing. If anyone has any questions about these loans, obviously I'm here to help. But if you guys have any questions, obviously I've been doing it a long time. So if you guys have any questions with this stuff, you can more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. Next slide. So now let's say if this is not enough. So you're going to say, okay, Congress, we're not listening to you. We're going to go higher. We're going to borrow some more money if we need to. You could, and you have some pretty good options. You have 3 great options. You have 3 buckets to pull from, right? You have an NJ class loan, the New Jersey College Loan to Assist State Students. For this year, kids are in college now, 3.70 fixed if you do principal and interest over 10 years, 4.25 interest only, 5.10 fully deferred, fixed. There is a 3% administrative fee, okay, that they add into the loan. If you sign up for auto pay for the 3.70 while you're in principal and interest, you get 0.25% off. When the students are out of school and interest only is over and you're in principal and interest, you get an extra 0.25% off. The state has consolidation, they have refinance. So if the rates go higher on other year loans, you can refinance, you can do whatever you want to do. Okay, student would be the borrower. Usually the parent would be the cosigner if they want. The parent could be the borrower if they want, but in most cases, parents leave the students as the borrower and the one parent would be a cosigner. The minimum income requirement to get this loan is $40,000 a year and have at least a 670 or higher Equifax credit score. So if you want to take advantage of 3.70, boom, and that would pay up to the rest of the cost of attendance, okay? And all these options do the same thing. So they all can borrow, you can see it there, all can borrow up to the cost of attendance. So whatever's left over that you're gonna have to pay for could be picked up by this, okay? So it doesn't have to come from your pocket if you don't have it. Obviously by paying monthly to the school is a better way because you don't have to pay interest, but this is an interest way of doing it. So next, the middle option is Federal Parent Plus loans, the federal program. So the NJ for NJ class is for the state of New Jersey, and that goes anywhere. Just so you know, NJ class goes anywhere the kids go. Some people ask, Andre, is that only for in-state? No, that's for wherever they go. They go to the Queen's University in England. Well, guess what? They go there. That's an eligible school. They would be covered. They go to NYU out of the country. That's covered. It works anywhere the kids go. Out of state, California. NJ class goes anywhere the kids go, in state, obviously, too. Parent Plus loan goes anywhere as well. Their rate is straight up, no matter how you pay it back, 5.30. They have a 4.24% administrative fee or origination fee. All right, their fees a little higher. Our job is at the state, especially if your kids go out of state, we can't offer state grants if you're eligible for it. So this is a way for us to kind of save you some money in interest, because we're able to usually, almost all the time, secure lower interest rates than the federal Parent Plus loan program. Not the loans the kids get in the previous line, but for the Parent Plus loan program. So we're an alternative to that program. So the problem that parents to have with it, it's the parent only loan. Like the parent is the only borrower. Can select pay now, interest only, or defer. Can borrow up to the cost of attendance. So you have one option, two options. Then you have the third option, which is the private education banks, right? So you got Sallie Mae, Discover, Wells Fargo, PNC Bank, Citizens Bank, for-profit banks. They may be fixed or variable rate loans. You have your choice. The federal government only does fixed. State of New Jersey only does fixed. They're fixed and fixed. But the private banks have both. You can borrow up to the cost of attendance. The private banks allow you to do what we do at the state of New Jersey. Student could be the borrower, or the parent can be the borrower. Take your choice. Tiered lending, though. It's tiered. These other ones are not tiered. You meet the minimums, you get as much as you want, whatever option you want, you pick the option you want. The banks assign you an interest rate based on your credit score and your debt, the income, and they do a whole review of that. So anywhere, like right now, Sallie Mae's anywhere from 4.74% fixed to 11.85% fixed. They do have a kicker though, it's a 0% fee. But generally the rates are higher than Parent Plus or Parent or NJ Class for the life of the loan. So it's something to look at. If you have a very, very high credit score well into the 800s, yes, you should look at one of these banks to see if they could, assist you with zero fee loan, because it is an option. It is an option to you. Okay. Like for example, if you go down a little lower, Sallie Mae's average interest rate, slightly low. I think it's 9 point something for all their loans. Can we go down a little bit lower if we can? Oh, great. So yeah, so the weighted average, if you look at their most recent annual borrower investor relations, their 19A fund, which is one of their latest, is 10 point. Their average interest rate for their kids in last year was, in that one bond, was 10.05, or debt offering that they offered. So that's their average. So it does range between 4.74 and 11.85. You can see they're actually technically on the high side on their average. All right, so it's just something to look at. If you're in the mid sevens, you may have a higher rate with them. So it's something to look at. But you do have these three buckets to do exactly the same thing. All right, and they all have different options: pay now, pay later, pay interest only. That same kind of option. So it's just something to look at. If you have any questions, I can always help. I don't care if I guess I do work for the state of New Jersey, so we do have NJ Class, but I don't care if you use us or not. I mean, it's up to you. So I just want you to save as much money. Like for example, Parent Plus, if you're a state worker or work for a not-for-profit, there are opportunities if you consolidate all your Parent Pluses at the end to get loan forgiveness if you don't pay it off in so many years, 20 years or something like that. So you can look at those kind of things. And I have some information on that. If you guys have any, if you have any questions, I can just give you as much as I can, and you can make the best decision you can. We have a calculator too, which can help you on our NJ Class page. That it doesn't matter. You just know what you think you'll owe. So you think you're going to owe 20,000, put it in, and we'll show you based on our interest rates what it would be for each one of these options. But you get a good idea what the payment would be, so you can get figure out 4 years or 1 year kind of thing. And then what you do is whatever your balance is for the year, you would borrow for, and then next year in their sophomore year, you do the same thing, and hopefully they'll get some more institutional money or some more free money, so that you wouldn't have to borrow as much. All right. And now is there any like max? Yes, there is a maximum for Parent Plus. They're talking about putting in a max, but they haven't done it yet. They talked about upping their minimum credit score, which no one knows what it is, but they haven't. I don't think they've done it yet. NJ Class does have, like, per kid, it's $160,000 per kid, I think. Somewhere around $160,000 per kid. So hopefully you don't have to borrow that much over that amount. But I think it's easy. So most of the time I haven't had a problem where parents have gone over that. The private banks, in most cases, each one is independent. Some do have caps, some do not. Usually in the 140 to 180,000 range if they have a cap. But they'll show it online. And we even have a comparison between all three on our website for NJ Class. You can kind of compare them. It's on a giant, crazy spreadsheet. So, you're more than welcome to use that chart to kind of look at all the different options. We compare every single one based on paying principal and interest now versus interest only versus fully deferred. Okay, so you can actually get a good idea and do some research now in advance, just in case you have to go this route. Hopefully, it's not a lot you have to borrow, but it is available to cover the complete cost of attendance, less any other aid. All right, next slide. I think we're almost done, and then if there are any questions that we can take care of. Listen, here's all the websites, maybe a little bit lower. Questions, you have my name, my email address, my direct phone number with my extensions. If you guys need me, like I said, both my kids went to West Windsor Plainsboro North. I've been in financial aid since 1982. I've been a director of financial aid. I audit the colleges if they were in compliance with financial aid. I work for New Jersey Higher Ed. I've worked for a lot of different schools. If you guys need any assistance in any way, I'm here to help you guys out in any way possible. You have all our websites, NJ Grants, NJ Class. We have a customer care line. We're virtual now, so we really don't have a phone. We're taking everything by email. NJ Best website, there's an NJ Best. So if you do have a college savings plan, that is a New Jersey Best one, great. There's mappingyourfuture.org. And again, don't be afraid to use me. I'm here to help you guys. Now, you can't come to, I've had, 40 parents each year from West Windsor Plainsboro come to my office and having a meeting with me. This year, we can't do that. It's going to be tough this year. So, but I'm more than welcome to set up a GoToMeeting call with you or a Zoom call and go over things if you need to independently. We'll set up a time and, a time frame it's good for both of us, and we'll get together and answer any questions you have. All right, that's all I got. I mean, how do we want to do questions, Mr. McDonald?
I would just, if we could take look at some themes perhaps and answer a few general questions. I certainly want to honor your time, and but I would.
Do you want to hit a couple of them? Do you want to grab the question, read it to me, and then how do you want to do it? You want me to just hit it? And
I mean, if you're comfortable, go ahead and.
Yeah, I'm good. All right, listen, I'm going to start from the very bottom because that's where it's at. Okay, so here's a question. Can students on H4 visas, parents on H1 visas apply for FAFSA? They can, because some schools require it. So there is a way to do it. The FAFSA, if you print that FAFSA that I've provided to the school, that draft FAFSA for 21-22, so you came to us late, you guys are the first ones probably to see it. That's just a regular customer. I mean, most of the colleges have it, and the vendors have it who have the program. We have all the information on the new FAFSA coming out, and I provided it to you, the draft one that you can't submit, but because it says draft on, do not submit. But you can actually look at that. You can get as much information you can. And it'll show you how a international student can use that FAFSA to make sure it gets to the college so that they can award their institutional aid. Now, that's for schools that say, yes, international kids should fill out the FAFSA. And they'll say it on their website. When you look up internet, if you look up the Google search of the deadline dates for incoming freshmen of all the financial aid applications, you'll be able to see, and it'll tell you what they do. Now, CSS Profile on this thing, there's a list of schools. And in that list of all the schools in alphabetical order, Bucknell, for example, is on that list. So you'll see Bucknell. You say, oh, my kid's interested in going to Bucknell, make an application. It'll say for domestic students, yes. For international students, yes or no. Do they want the CSS profile, or do they want them to complete the domestic one? All right. So they'll have different options, or not a CSS profile at all. They may have their own. So you have to do your research early. Know the schools your child's thinking about applying to, not apply to, but thinking about applying to, and go do your research. Get your spreadsheet set up like I did on the third slide, I guess. And again, you guys are more than welcome to email me. I'll send you a blank one. Yeah, so you can still fill out the FAFSA. I'll go to the next one. So anything we do at New Jersey Higher Ed is free, okay? New Jersey Higher Ed, we're here for free for you guys. We're not for-profit state entity. We're actually a self-supportive state entity. We survive on our own, it's not the same as other state agencies, but we're lucky that way. We've done a lot of work for the U.S. Department of Education over the years since the 1960s that we were paid for. And So we have reserves in there that we're able to create different programs and do different things. So we are self-supportive state agency. Yes, anything you need from us is completely free. How about merit-based aid? Okay, so yeah, so merit-based we talked about earlier, maybe you missed it. Merit-based aid comes from the institution. There's a whole bunch of list of things on like slide number 6 or 7 where it says, that institutional aid merit, class rank, high school attended, um, athletics, ACTs, SAT scores, AP classes taken, how well you did. All those things are all going to put together to assemble that merit-based, hopefully, program. And again, private schools usually provide the most merit-based aid. Not all the time, but most of the time. All right. So parents call me saying, well, why is Seton Hall giving me, they're more money, but why are they giving 40,000 and Rutgers is giving me nothing but a student loan? And my, did really well, did really good. Well, that's just how it works out. That's just how sometimes state schools match up against private institutions. When are you supposed to take out these loans? Every year. So generally what parents do is any type of loan you need over and above the federal direct student loans the kids need, and you know that you're going to need it because you're going to get that cost of attendance. You're going to know how much free money you're going to get. You know about what it's going to cost. So you can say, okay, yes, I know I'm going to need about maybe $15,000 a year, $8,500 per semester. Well, yeah, then, you can start thinking about it, start planning for it. You would take it out. Usually most parents take it. Well, it depends. If you're nervous that you just barely meet the minimum requirements, then some parents will do it with our NJ class loan as early as March, but not many. March, April, May, June. Most of the time they do it in end of June, July, August. This year, probably this has been the latest because a lot of schools didn't know what they're going to charge the kids. They didn't know if they're going to be on campus. So most of the parents have done their loans very late. We do about, the state of New Jersey does about $200 million in NJ class loans. Okay, Parent Plus obviously is the whole country, because they support the whole country. There are much more. The private banks do the entire country. We do just our New Jersey residents attending anywhere. So we'll do a little less, obviously, it's just for you guys. Is NJ class for international students? No, you need to have a valid SSN, so it's eligible U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens. It's not like our grants program where they have an alternative application for, say, undocumented students. That program is not for NJ class. That is separate. It's a separate program that the state runs, or New Jersey Higher Ed runs for the families. Okay. A parent can borrow as much as they need. Okay. What is the max? Really, pretty much the max you need per year. If it's $60,000, yeah, you could do it. I don't recommend it, but yes, you could do it. And you'll be able to do that, for your kids. But generally, though, it's not that much. Usually, you're going to get some institutional aid, and hopefully, it's the worst case if it's Rutgers, you're 20, maybe a little less than, hopefully less than $20,000 a year if you have to. But you can get usually as much as you need, up to the cost of attendance, less other aid. Parent Plus loans, are you guaranteed a state or plus loan? No. So just remember, this is a great question. You're not guaranteed a state plus loan or bank loan. Obviously, bank loans, yes, they may give you something at 13%. I'm not sure if that's really doing you a favor. But, I would say if I was I'll tell you what I did. So, I had 2 kids going to go to college. I went to North, one with the George Washington, one with the NYU my daughter went to. So, I knew, be working in financial aid, that if me and my wife worked, I'm not going to get any need-based aid. I'm hoping for institutional aid to offset what I'm going to have to spend. So I made sure when my kid was probably in their freshman year in high school that I made sure my credit score was as stellar as possible. I had to make sure it was in the 800 range because I had to make sure that I could get loans every year if I had to for my kids. Okay, so if it was 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, whatever it is, I had to make sure. You got to work on your credit score to make sure it's as high as possible. So you have the most opportunity to make sure that you can cover those tuition costs. I've had cases where mom was okay the first year, mom was okay the second year, but maybe she started at 710 and then she went down to 650, and then then the loan options start disappearing. So then the third year, they may have to get a grandparent involved to help co-sign, double co-sign, have a joint co-signer on there. So you have to just be careful and just make sure besides deadlines, it's very important to make sure you meet all your application deadlines for need-based aid and merit-based aid and all that kind of stuff, is your credit score is essential, especially if they're not going to community college. All right. It's just important to make sure you get as high as you possibly can. Do not wait till the last minute to make sure that your score is as high as possible. So one of the questions, will my kids know your income if they fill out the FAFSA? Oh, great question. And this is great because that's important. We've had this issue for years. So here's the thing, parents. So I have a lot of times where parents say they don't want to give it because they're afraid the children are going to know how much money they make. So what we did was, not us, but the federal government did, because I worked for the federal government at the time. When the parents do the IRS data retrieval, they have to log in with their username and password. It goes over to the IRS magically, links in, pulls their information, drops it onto the FAFSA, as long as you say yes, as the parent, and then it comes over as asterisks. No one knows besides the school and the state that you live in, that the FAFSA goes to, what the parent's income is. So the students can never see what the income is, okay? So as long as you use the IRS data retrieval tool and bring the information back over from IRS, it's shielded from anyone who looks at it, even yourself. You just got to trust that they're bringing over the right amount from IRS. so if you ever want to double check it, you give me a buzz, and just to make sure they didn't bring over $1 million when it should have been $100,000. So yes, it is shielded. Can you speak to parents' assets reported as well as consider 529 plan? So yes, parents' assets are a big piece of this. So I have parents with no income but have rental properties. Well, guess what? Those rental properties are assets that are used to pay for your child's education. That's your income. So we use it for state of New Jersey. The federal government has it as investments. So yes, for assets, any kind of assets. Now, it'll ask you, do you own a business? If a business to the government is, you only put the value of it if it has 100 employees or less. Or more. 100 employees or more. Okay. So if you have a small plumbing business, electrical business, you have a computer company, you write programs, they only want to know about your business if it's 100 employees or more. Listen, they still get that information anyway from the tax information, through schedules if you're selected for verification, but they don't want to know about the equipment that you own and all the other stuff that you own that a business would have. They don't want to know about that if it's less than 100 employees. Now, the 529 plan, a great question, because that is an investment. That's an investment or an asset that you would have. Yes, they want to know that. And yes, if the parents have a 529 plan, it goes on the parent side. If a grandparent has a 529 plan, it goes on the student side. Now, I got to be quite frank, a lot of times parents don't know. And they submit the FAFSA that the grandparents, they know the grandparents had a 529 plan for their grandchild. So there's nothing you can do. It was already submitted. So a lot of them, sometimes it doesn't show up on that side of the equation. But the parents do know, and they should have the 529. And it does come up. I know when they're selected for verification, they'll know if they have that type of investment. So it does go against need-based aid, but not merit-based aid, gang. Okay. And again, if you make over 70, 65,000, most likely you're not going to receive any need-based aid. So if that's the case, you could have $1 million in your 529 plan. It's not going to affect it either way or another because you already have the income that exceeds the amount for need-based aid. So that investment's not going to make any difference. The school doesn't care. If they're going to give a merit-based aid of $60,000 a year, like in my daughter's case, when she was going to go to school in California, when they accepted her, said, listen, we're going to give you $64,000 a year out of the 66 or something like that, 66 out of 68. They looked at my 529 plan, and I had a nice size 529 plan because obviously I've been in financial aid since I was 18 years old, my entire adult life. And I knew from being in financial aid, I'm not going to really get much financial aid of need-based aid. So I could pack that account with as much as I want. And no school really cares what you have in there. That's not going to limit them to say, no, we're not going to give them the merit-based aid, because that can make a decision whether or not they come to that school or not. So in that instance, yeah, they didn't care. And Oberlin didn't care. NYU didn't care. none of the schools cared what we had in investment, say in the 529 plan. They were going to give their institutional aid the way they wanted to give it. They didn't really care about what they had, how much money they made. If again, I just want to cover this again. It's so important. If a parent, when you're completing a FAFSA, so you have a senior now, they're going to do a 21, 22 FAFSA. They're going to use your 19 income, 2019 income. You have to submit it that way. If not, they're going to make you go back and change it to 2019 anyway. So, and if your income is going to be less in 2020, say because of COVID, because you were furloughed or laid off, well, the school has a special process for that. So if you have 4 schools your child's interested in, and they haven't made a decision yet, and you want to really narrow it down, pick one of the schools, let them know what your special circumstances is, and they're going to collect information on your 20 income, and they're going to redo, or they go in specifically, they have a way into the FAFSA to lower your income to what they figured it to be. So when I was a federal auditor, we would be able to go out and say, yes, you made this change. Show me the documentation that you used this projected your income. You took their income from 100,000 down to 50,000. Okay. And we all know that the school made that change, and that was the special circumstances or special professional judgment that they do. So again, you're going to submit the FAFSA with 2019 income, talk to the school, they can make any changes. You'll supply documentation to them. And if you want to see what that process is, you can go to any school's website, financial aid's website, and go look at special circumstances or professional judgment forms that they have, and you can see the form they're going to ask you to provide. It won't change much. They'll just change the dates on it pretty much. Okay. So that helps on that question. What is FSA ID? We have a link to that in the slide. It's a username and password for both one parent and the student. And can we enter an ITIN number for an international student who doesn't have an SSN? You can, and that's a good way to get that record over to the school so they can figure out institutional aid, because they require the FAFSA, right? They don't have a different application for international students. Again, though, remember, a lot of schools do have a separate application than FAFSA for international students. And that could be the CSS profile, or it could be their own institutional application. Do we have to fill out the FAFSA to be considered for merit-based scholarships? No. So that's one of the questions a lot of parents ask me. I don't want to fill out a FAFSA. Well, okay, you don't have to. If I didn't, I would have lost out on $64,000 for free, even though I didn't qualify originally for any merit-based scholarships for my child. So, but eventually I did. So I kept on filling out the FAFSA, and he was able to get $60-some thousand. So no, you do not have to complete the FAFSA. Some schools may require it anyway, but not many of them, because a lot of parents think that they're not eligible because they talk to their neighbor, and they may be eligible for a Pell Grant. They may be eligible for a TAG grant. Maybe not a lot, but guess what? The school wants that taken off first before they give out their institutional aid. Okay, so and that's usually how that'll work. All right, so I'm trying to look at this mean first college 25. Yeah, so a couple questions about. If I went back to my third slide where I had my sheet, I submitted the CSS profile. This question is about CSS profile and the cost for that. $25 for the first school on the list, $16 for each additional school. There was probably, I don't know, say 7 of the schools or 8 of the schools that required the CSS profile. I submitted that profile prior to knowing that she was accepted, because their deadline date was prior in most cases. Some cases it was after they were going to accept her or not. So yes, I did lose out on some money, because guess what? 2 of the schools didn't accept her. So I kind of lost out on $16 or $32. But for the schools that did accept her, there was big money. It was well over the $32 I wasted on a CSS profile. So, and I only wanted to do the application one time. I didn't want to go back to that application and say, okay, this school accepted her. It's still before the deadline. I want to add this school. I don't want to pay the $16. To me, it's not necessary. Just get it done once. You got it all done. Yes, it's a potential chance that they don't accept your child, and you wasted $16 for that CSS profile application. But if you got $40,000 a year or for each year, as long as they keep a certain GPA, who cares about the $32? Is what I say. So that's why I tried to get it all done, all at once, as quickly as I could. All right, so let me see if there's any other here. Okay, here's a great question. So what is the typical variance between estimated price shown in the net price calculator versus the actual price? This is really a good question because I get this a lot sometimes in financial. I tried the net price calculator for my oldest child, and it was really off. Okay, the reason why it's usually off is because the school doesn't ask a lot of questions. So if you went home tonight and looked at Rutgers net price calculator, and then you looked at Seton Hall's net price calculator, you'll see Seton Hall's calculator asks for SAT scores, GPA, class rank. They'll ask for a lot more information. The schools that don't ask for a lot of information, just maybe ask your household size, number in college, income, maybe some of your investments, 529 plan, and then you hit submit, well, they're not going to be as accurate. The ones that ask for more information, more detailed information about your child, well, guess what? They're going to go out to their database and find those just like them, same type of SAT score, same type of GPA, and they'll pull them back and show, yes, these kids' net price is $20,000 a year, and Rutgers may be $32,000 a year versus Seton Hall. You know what I mean? So because they ask for more detailed information. So that's a telltale sign, you guess you can say. If they don't ask too much, it's not going to be as close. So there'll be a bit greater variance. If they ask for a lot more information, then you're going to have almost precise type of calculation. Okay, if that helps. And I think that's it. Well, listen, I know we have to wrap it up. I could be here all night, and which I would do. But listen, if you guys have any questions, you have my direct phone number. I'm not in the office. Email is the best way to get me. So if you send me an email and say, hey, Andre, at amaglione@hesaa.org, here's my phone number. Can you give me a call between this time and this time? I'll say, well, listen, can we set something up? Is Tuesday good at between 10 and 11? We'll set that up, and then I'll give you a buzz at your house, or you'll call my work cell. And then, we'll work that out, and we'll have a little go over some of the questions that you still have. Okay. Again, I'm here to help you guys out as much as we can, to leave as much support as I can to the West Windsor group. Obviously, I was there most of my life. I grew up in Hamilton. All my kids grew up in West Windsor. My two kids grew up in West Windsor, went to the West Windsor schools. So yeah, I'm committed to you guys. Mr. McDonald's done a great job with the kids. My counselor is great for my son that he's had over at West Windsor, Plainsboro North, and my daughter. So yes, I'm here to support you guys, to make sure you guys get all the information you need. And I wish you the very best, and stay healthy. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Mr. McDonald, maybe talk about your system and stuff there.
Sure. Just a couple quick things to wrap up. Andre, number one, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Just a wealth of information for our parents and families. Can't thank you enough for your efforts here tonight, and just being available for us going forward. That said, as I said before, I recorded tonight's presentation. We'll get this up on the district YouTube channel as soon as possible. The PowerPoint and other materials have already been shared on the district website. Again, under counseling, high school counseling, college planning guides. Additionally, I want to just share that we do have a wealth of information regarding local scholarships, state scholarships, and whatnot that come through the district. You're going to find that in your son or daughter's Naviance account. There are also some other private scholarships out there. We post all of that in Naviance. It's really your go-to to access that information. There is a local kind of scholarship packet that we'll put out as we get into the spring. That's something you will get information from us on, but feel free to reach out with any additional questions. Be well, stay safe, and thank you very much, and have a great night.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.